Is Michael Roy Turney, the father of Sarah Elizabeth Turney and Alyssa Marie Turney, and Barbara Lee Turney's husband. But what I want to address on this about the Quest incident that Sarah has now just put a recent video out. Again, gaslighting you folks, she calls it, hoodwinking you, lying is what I call it, about what really occurred. The facts in the case is simple. And if I can stay on track, which is not easy for me because I am a nutcase, there's no question in that, is simply this. When Alyssa called, my star 67 or 69 or whatever it was called back then that I paid for didn't work. Two reasons. One, from when Alyssa did call, I didn't immediately push that. Okay, and as we found out later, that particular program did not store or keep out-of-state phone calls and their numbers. And secondly, my brother-in-law, Lyle Garman, called. So his number would have been the one I would have pulled up when I got back to the house after searching the area to see if Alyssa was close to the house when she called. So what happened is I approached the phone company, Quest, and attempted locally, and then it kept going up higher and higher until I got to the Denver office, their main office, trying to get them just to give me the one phone number and a location, which I know they had the capability. Now, I knew what they could do and couldn't do and what it took to get this because one of the people that I was drafted with and got to know worked for Mall Bell, AT&T, and then also had worked for Quest, and knew all about this data farming and the what they call the information dump or phone number dumps that they use, as they call it, and of what the process was and how it didn't cost a massive amount of money. But in the meantime, while I'm doing all of this, what I wind up exposing is that Quest was charging $350 per 24 hour to sell their customers information without their permission, which in 2001, there was regulations that prevented that. They were not supposed to be doing that, okay? So, en route in my desperation to try and get it, and Quest had denied me any chance of getting it, and there was no... Just pay us $500 and we'll give it to you. That's not what they said at all. What they said is they wanted a subpoena. So, of course, I researched the law and found out that the only mandate at that time under federal regulations, the FCC, was that I provide an affirmative written request. And now, that could be anything from a notarized signature in your phone bill. But it certainly is not a subpoena, which mandates a court action, or you have to be a sworn police officer in order to get that information. So, and because National Center for Missing Exploited Children and the Phoenix PD had refused to get me the phone number, I even went to the Department of Public Safety in Arizona because they, in fact, had clearinghouse, is what they call it, the powers to issue a document similar to an affidavit for a search warrant to get the number for me. But they said they had given that powers to the City of Phoenix Police Department along with the federal funding. Now, National Center for Missing Exploited Children also had funding that they were receiving from the federal government for that purpose to help parents who had, like my incident, a child that called home, and to find out and trace down the phone number. So everything is blocked. One of the many, many incidents of the government and the entities blocking my search and investigation of and for Alyssa. And so I'm left with no alternative but to file a lawsuit. So I have to file a lawsuit. I go to the Northeast Justice of the Peace, file the lawsuit against Quest. So in the meantime, this is going to be a delayed process because, of course, Quest is going to just drag it out, and they did for 6 weeks. So in the meantime, I go to the Arizona Corporation Commission and file a complaint. I also attend one of their meetings, and hand out flyers as to what Quest is doing, that they're selling the private information of their customers without their permission, along with copies of the law and the regulations that restricts them from doing that. So everybody gets angry. Next thing we know, we have this big group meeting at the Corporation Commission, and it's right on borderline violent because the customers want to know what in the hell is going on. Meantime, of course, I contact my representatives in Congress. I even approached Jon Kyl and John McCain, the two senators at the time. So all of that falls and fails apart, and they give me the old Washington, D.C., Potomac two-step garbage and trash about something. I don't know what the hell they told me. A full moon, I can't give it to you or something. So regardless of that, I put together a protest at the 20th Street and Camelback offices of Jon Kyl and John McCain in a parking lot across from their building after getting permission from the store owners, who were also livid about Quest. So anyway, to make it short, and of course the Phoenix PD showed up and threatened me as they always do, and then followed me around and the whole 9 yards. And it's amazing how every time a Phoenix cop showed up in a disputed situation, it was always this 6'10" or 9" giant, with a very look down at me and hostile look and demeanor. So, but regardless, eventually I did get to this, but in the meantime, Quest had their lawyers come after me, who threatened to take everything away from me, including my firstborn, as they were representing in the Corporation Commission thing. Of course, those people are all taking money from Quest, as was John McCain and Jon Kyl. So now we've got this this thing is built up into quite a big event, and everybody's pretty well angry at the guy that started it, which is me. And I've done this many times before. Even did win my federal whistleblower case for wrongful termination, Sarah. Yes, it was a forced. If you don't quit, we're going to fire you. However, it will be nice if you'll resign and allow you to keep the health insurance on your dying 34-year-old wife, so you can, you won't have to die in absolute agony and pain, so you can keep buying her the morphine sulfate she needs, so she can die without suffering tremendously. So, and that's called anyway, they got a name for it that it was used. It was a termination clear, the same as 1995. They did it again, all forced by the unions. So regardless of all of that sidetrack stuff, I did eventually get it. Well, Quest did not send me, as I had tried to get, the location. So I had to keep calling that number. It turned out to be some kind of convenience store around, was it 405 or highway, something like that, up around Moreno County, and which was directly in line to go to Torrance, California, where her aunt, Lynette, lived. So I immediately put together that and put together a trip, begging Sarah to go with me. She didn't really want to go. So regardless, Quest did send me a letter that was in those files that Sarah read, but she didn't want to share it with you, where they requested $10,000 up front because originally I wanted 30 days. Now, we get into the real political one, which is, again, why I went to Jon Kyl's office, because he was on the National Security Committee for the Senate, is because I knew that this gentleman that worked in the phone business told me that the government had the technology to pull the files off of and records off of a cell phone. And that's what I wanted from Sarah. Well, Jon Kyl's immediately, not himself, but his representatives, because he never talked to the senators, said that they couldn't do that, or they wouldn't do that, was actually more specific, even though they had the ability to do it, because when they said no the first time, of course, I challenged them and told them, look, I know better than that. Here's why you can pull those phone numbers off. But they refused to, and that's just exactly the way that worked. But that offended them, because part of this information also showed that Quest was selling this information also to the highest bidder, whoever wanted to pay that $350 per 24-hour period, which included Amdocs, which is an Israeli-owned information company, and Pakistan. Now, Jon Kyl was embarrassed, upset in office, because this also hit the media. okay, that he wasn't aware that a company he was taking campaign finance money from, Quest, was in fact selling private information of Americans to a foreign country, especially one that was not pro-America, Pakistan. So that's the gist of the situation. Sarah comes up with all this other crap and stuff and everything because, and I know that this is feeding into keeping her cash cow alive. It made her famous, the attention she's always needed, and of course she's getting paid for this. And no, I'm not going to write a book. I don't want to pay $25,000 to $50,000 to have a publisher put this book together and try and distribute it and only have ABC, NBC, or the government block the distribution. Yes, folks, they do that. Anyway, that's what Fuller legal department told me, that more than likely, because I gave interviews to ABC and NBC, they would block the distribution because my book would surely show that they're liars, that they're in it for the soap operas and trash, and they don't really doing a proper investigation, and they edited it so bad it was just ridiculous. Just as much as the last interview I gave for Peacock, NBC, well over an hour and a half or whatever it was, and they edited it down to what, 5-6 minutes? Because Sarah looked that bad in that particular situation. She was not well prepared. She was, again, wrong on all these rumors, innuendos, and lies that she has been helping the Phoenix PD push in order to get a criminal conviction. And that whole thing, I mean, folks, in reality, you don't put people in jail based on rumors, innuendos, and perjurious affidavits filed by bad cops who can't find the evidence, even with the help of the FBI and the National Center for Missing Children. Anyway, good luck to you. I know this is going to be edited and suppressed by our female producers because both of my cases and this whole incident's been gender divided at levels that just really shocks me. Good luck to you.